But that's not really a chart of gold going up. That's a chart of the dollar going down. That means the U.S. dollar has lost better than 99%
I don't disagree.
of its value.
Yeah.
That's what inflation is. They're adding more of these things to the system, and so the value of it falls. In the case of adding dollars, when they're adding more of them, it now takes more of those same dollars to buy the same ounce of gold. Same with the house. Is housing going up, or does it simply take more dollars to buy that same house? I mean, the cost of materials changes and so on. However, that's what's happening with inflation. The Federal Reserve tells us that year over year, they want to hit 2% inflation, and we know that it's way higher than 2% now. But if we do hit 2% inflation, that means year over year, you're losing 2% of your money. Let's say that you have $100,000 in the bank, $100,000. Year over year at 2% inflation, that means that your $100,000 next year is only going to have $98,000 of purchasing power. So if you're putting $100,000 away for your future, for your kids, year over year, how many years is it going to take before the purchasing power of that 100,000 is literally down to 50,000? What, 20 years? Or it's going to be less than that? And that's if it only stays at 2%. On a year over year basis. So the purchasing power of the dollar is going down. That's why the cost of gold is going up. And the same thing is happening with Bitcoin. All of this is about people being scared of the US dollar, being scared of fractional reserve banking in general. In other words, money that's not backed on actual commodities. The US dollar from the Federal Reserve is a fractional reserve currency. It is not based off of gold. It's not based off of silver. It's not based off of any commodity. It's called fiat. In other words, they declare that this is money and that it's money. And then when they add lots and lots and lots and lots more money to the system, the value of it goes down. And that's what we're experiencing today when we go to grocery shelves at the store. They want to sell a story of price gouging and, that these companies don't want to sell their products for some reason. They're capitalist companies that want to make money, but they just don't want to sell their products, so they're going to put it in out of reach costs. No, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. And so our leaders have a plan for this. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which injected something around $3 trillion into the economy. They took where we were at with inflation, and then they just put it into hyper mode by adding another $3 trillion, which is the opposite of what you would want to do if you were lowering inflation. And so imagine that you are going to the gym to work out and you have a trainer. And so you go to the gym and the first thing your trainer tells you to do is tells you to put on 100 pounds. And you're like, what? And the trainer's like, just trust me, just put on 100 pounds. So you go and you start eating and you put on 100 pounds. Then over the course of the next 6 months, the trainer, through working out at the gym, helps you lose 50 pounds. And then they hold it up to you that, look at this, we helped you lose 50 pounds. And you're like, yeah, but you had me put on 100 pounds. This is exactly what happened with the Inflation Reduction Act. They had us put on $3 trillion worth of fat, worth of pulling the purchasing power of the US dollar down. And then they're like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to do an interest rate cut and, we're going to do some trickery at the Fed and we're going to bring it down some. And so they take it from this insane high of them adding 3 trillion down by a tiny little bit. And now they want to throw a party because they've done like the tiniest little bit and the economy kind of sucks worse than it's ever been before. That's crazy to me. What we really need is we need to cut inflation by having the Federal Reserve be backed up by gold. So the reserve, our reserve, as well as the central banks of the world, they've been buying up gold at record amounts. The price of gold has been going up because the value of the currencies are falling. And as the values of these currencies fall, these central banks are seeing the writing on the wall. So the central banks are using their fake money right now to buy up as much gold as they possibly can. And they're doing that because they likely see that there could be changes coming up. After all, the rest of the world is switching over to a new financial system called BRICS. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, which is a new financial system that those 5 signatory nations have put together. And since then, many other nations have come and they are now applying to be part of this BRICS coalition. They're talking about having a common currency and having that currency be backed on some type of commodity, maybe even gold. Because remember, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, just India and China alone is like 2.6 billion people. And so it's going to be a sound store of currency and it's going to make sense for nations to use this for trade, especially for international trade. Some nations, like El Salvador, are even turning to Bitcoin simply because it is a much more sound store of value. In America, our central bank, the Federal Reserve, is talking about creating a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency. And a CBDC would take the already out of control inflation we have and put that into hyperinflation. It would allow them to add, just by clicks on the computer, even more money to the system. It would allow them to be able to control the money in a very strange way. They'd be able to give money for stimulus, for example, that can expire. CBDCs can be used for the control and the monitor and the spying of the users of the currency. And so the CBDC is also another example of a fiat currency, of a currency that's not based on anything. It's just made up out of nowhere. So the rest of the world, through BRICS, is turning to commodity-backed systems, while America is attempting to go into a CBDC, which is a system that's not backed by any commodity. The US dollar used to be based off of a specific weight of gold. A US dollar and the note that it was corresponded to a specific weight of gold in the treasury. Same thing with a $20 bill, $100 bill. All US dollars were chained to a specific amount of gold, and that is what would hold a money system in check. But as we know, in the 1970s, they did away with this gold standard. And after that, and you can see on the chart, the price of gold just rose really, really, really quickly over time. And so gold has shown to be a very stable store of value, as well as a good investment in terms of generating a profit. So for me, what the most important thing is about actually being able to convert my US dollars to a store of value that's not constantly changing. It's not constantly going to be going down. The value of the US dollar is constantly going down. And over time, as you can see in the chart, the value of gold has continued to go up and up and up and up. Now, it might not be like the stock market where in terms of making massive profits in short periods of time. However, it is a sound store of value over a long period of time. Bitcoin could potentially be the same thing. But the thing about Bitcoin is that there's only a specific amount, a finite amount that they're going to add. And they will never add more of that according to the Bitcoin charter. And so if that's the case, then the Bitcoin charter itself will hold Bitcoin from having massive amounts of inflation. It can't have inflation because they're not going to add more. And that's the problem with the US dollar and with other fractional reserve banking systems, such as the euro, is that when you can continually add more, the value of it goes down. If you have lots and lots of Coca-Cola, for example, can you sell it for $1 per can? Or if Coca-Cola is just everywhere, you can only sell it for 50 cents a can. Because the more of something that there is, the value of it goes down. The more rare something is, the value of it goes up. And the same is true with currency. In fact, it could be more true with currency. We shouldn't have an inflation rate at all. The Fed tells us that we should have a 2% year over year inflation rate. Why? That means 2% of your wealth is being stolen year over year, and they openly tell you that that's their target rate. That's crazy to me. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis. And if you're interested in knowing where I get my gold from, go to the comments area. And also let us know if you have any special mints or places that you like to get your gold from, because we're all about sharing and learning here. And I hope that you got a lot of value out of today's video. If you did, go ahead and give us a like. Thank you so much for joining us.